Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Audacity. This is our third official episode, and we are so excited to wrap up our issues around the world that women are facing overview. We are going to be covering today women in schools and workplaces and why young men are turning conservative. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Lisa. I go by YV Edit on TikTok as well as on YouTube. And I have my amazing co-hosts with me. We have Sovereign Woman in the house.
Hello, everyone.
And we have Gwen with us today.
Howdy, y'all.
And we just want to say thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for subscribing, for sharing the show with your friends. Please make sure you do that. If there's an episode you particularly enjoyed, or if you want to send them all three so that they have a comprehensive understanding of what we're doing here, that would be great. We would appreciate it so much. Thank you to our Patreon supporters. We're so excited to have you in the community. We're so excited to get to all of your mailbag questions. Thank you for those who have sent them in. And if y'all have any more, we have a mailbag email address. It is mailbag@sirensound.co, and that will be in the show notes as well. And before we dive into this episode, let's have some tea. What's been on your mind this week, ladies?
Did y'all hear Johnny Somali? He's that Twitch streamer, and he just does, he goes overseas and he just does some of the weirdest
I
stuff.
need you to fill me in on this like so badly because I have no idea what's going on.
So from my understanding, and I got this from Twitter, so he's like this Twitch streamer and he goes overseas to these conservative countries like Japan and Korea. And I'm not saying that anyways. So they go over there and he triggers them. Like he does stuff to like purposely make people angry, and he records people's reactions. So this one that I saw, he's sitting in like a Korean corner store, and it's, you know, run by an old lady, and she's in the corner and she's just kind of doing her thing, and he's eating ramen, but then he takes the ramen, he throws the noodles at the door and at the window so that they stick, and just like making a mess and just acting like a toddler essentially. And just like looking around the room, seeing if anybody's reacting, and like nobody's reacting at first because they're just like, what is this foreigner doing? And finally the old lady like kicks him out, and he's laughing like this is all this one big joke and it's fun and it's funny for him. But like that's just a mess that this poor old woman has to like clean up because you just thought that acting like a toddler was cute for some reason, but all it's doing is making us Americans look bad because you go to these countries representing us, whether you like it or not, and then you act a fool. So Johnny Somali is in Korea and can't get out until his trial and sentence. So they took away his passport so that way he can't leave. But he took it way too far by messing with a comfort women statue. He filmed himself kissing it, as far as I know, but he might have done much worse off camera. He apologized publicly, but then not soon after that, he got busted for carrying around the Imperial Japanese flag, as well as a picture of Shinzo Abe and playing the Imperial Anthem of Japan.
Let me tell you guys why you guys are weak. Because instead of fighting Japan, you guys want to fight a small golden goblin, a small black YouTuber. Instead of fighting Japan, why don't you instead of fighting me, go fight Japan?
So yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to get out of this one.
So he's basically like a professional troll.
Yes. But yeah, so that's what he's doing. He's just a professional little shit starter of like epic proportion, because he drags into this beef that goes as far back as like their history that actually I like to say a lot of, but the Japanese people that I've met are ashamed of. So he just drags up that past and just wants to just cause all sorts of shit for whatever reason. I don't know. This man has no self-preservation instincts, because like, why are you going to Korea and playing the Japanese anthem from that time and hurting the comfort women statue? Like, what are you doing? Like he had to have known. Like you, right? Like you don't just go to other people's countries and mess with their historical sites. It's like going to the Holocaust Museum and like kissing a picture of Anne Frank, you know?
Right.
Like you don't do that.
Very disrespectful.
Awful.
Men will do anything to get attention.
Even if it costs them everything.
Yeah, and they'll hype each other up. I heard somebody saying this. I want to say it was Cecilia Regina, but she said men will not hype each other up more than when they're about to just blow their whole life up.
Yeah.
Like That's when men hype them up the most. Like she was using Tom Brady as an example. And she was saying like men were hyping him up so bad to like come back to football and divorce Giselle and like do all this stuff. And they've been all real quiet since.
But
Interesting.
it's kind of what they get, because if you put that much stock in what stranger men or just any men think over your family, over your wife, and you're willing to like, you don't deserve it. You don't deserve a wife and
absolutely.
kids. You don't deserve a lot of things if you are going to put them last. The opinions of the boys are more important. Then you get what you get.
Yep. Well, have you guys heard about my tea this week? The thing that's just been haunting my freaking life is the fact that I heard, I think it was in the teachers subreddit, a teacher had posted that, last week and in the weeks before, boys were saying the whole your body, my choice thing to girls. And she said that some of her students, some of the female students were flattered by that. And they thought that the boys were like flirting with them and like being nice to them. And then I saw this other TikTok by a teacher talking about how the girls are forgotten in the current environment, like on the internet, and like they need attention too, because the way that boys and girls experience and present themselves on the internet is very, very different. And it is hurting girls. And all we're talking about is how it's hurting boys. We talk about how men get or boys get left behind, or like they're not being talked about well or whatever. But we don't talk about the fact that girls are forced to care so much about their appearance. They're forced to interact with social media with, real pictures, whereas boys will usually put an avatar and just, troll or whatever. Whereas girls are, I don't know, they're forced to put out this whole identity online, and it results in them not having like real identity to hold on to like in real life. And it was just a fascinating conversation. But they also brought up this like rise in trad wife rhetoric among young girls and the masculine rhetoric among young boys. And it's happening right now because we're not paying attention to what the internet is doing to young girls, like the influencers, the filters, the body shaming, the ever-changing body standards even, like back in my day, you just had to be skinny. That was like your only job. Yeah. But now it's like there's a variety of, different things, and nothing and nobody's good enough. And I don't know, I feel like it's kind of this evolutionary instinct that young boys and girls are having to sort of prepare themselves into what we're about to be transitioning into. This like
I agree.
Whole masculinity, like they can tell, you know what I mean? And they're sort of just like prepping themselves for what's going to help them survive. They're like, oh, I need to be subservient. When boys say your body, my choice, that's a good thing. That's because they want to protect me or, something like that. Wow. And I don't know, it just feels like we're just going back to like women feel safer doing that. They feel like they'll be protected. And I also feel like it has a lot to do with what kind of pornography young boys are watching and young girls are watching even too, because it's very much your body, my choice in those videos when it comes to men and women. Anyway, that's been very upsetting to me.
It is very upsetting. And it just reminds you that not every woman or girl, not every woman is going to, I guess, free herself from the patriarchal mindset or the internal misogyny. It's unfortunate, but every woman, as I like to call it, everybody can't have a seat at the table. So there's always going to be women who are free from all of that. And there's going to always be women who either self-oppress or that are just oppressed. And when I first got on social media, I always wanted to feel like we're going to get the vast majority of women all on one accord, and we're going to all like see each other's worth, and we're going to help each other. And every day I'm reminded that no, there's going to be a nice chunk of women that are just going to stay oppressed, and there's nothing we can do about it. And they can just be seen as cautionary tales at the most, I would say. And we just keep it moving.
And speaking of that, Sovereign, do you want to talk about the trophy wife?
Oh, God. Yeah, people were hitting me up the last few days to ask me what I thought about it. And first I wasn't going to talk about it. I might do a video about it, but the biggest takeaway from her story, and for those of you who don't know who that is, just a quick rundown. A woman does like hypergamy content, and she talks about how important it is to find you a husband and all that stuff. And then she took advice from Shira 7 on how to level up and be hypergamous. She did. She found a guy, and fast forward, she ended up having 2 daughters. She had 2 sons already, and then she had 2 daughters by him. And come to find out, he was molesting the 2 daughters, and they're age 2 and 4. So that's the quick rundown. Basically, she married him after only knowing him for 1 week.
1 week. Yeah.
1 week.
That's not
7
normal.
days.
That's love bombing every time. Like there's
Thank you.
no universe in which that is okay.
Mm-mm.
No.
And I wanted to bring up something about that too, real quick. She was clearly desperate. I mean, she needed a place to stay. She jumped from one relationship to the next, like really quick, dragged her kids into it. Apparently he was essaying her right after the marriage, and she still had 2 kids with him, which was weird, which also means she was getting on social media and projecting this image that she found her Prince Charming, and he was it was love at first sight, and when you know, and she was doing all of that. But
that's why y'all got to take these accounts at face value.
Absolutely.
You can't. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry, continue.
But the thing that I wanted to point out is that there is rhetoric around if a man really knows that you're the one, he knows within the first few months, or he knows right away, or he knows within 6 months, or whatever. It's possible that this woman in particular, or other women out there, would see a man saying what the guy said to her was, if you can come stay with me, because she needed a place to stay because she broke up with her ex before him. And he told her, you can stay with me, but it's not going to be as my girlfriend. It's going to be as you as my wife. And she's like, oh, how serious are you? And she went out and got his ring for him. And I guess he got her one, and they got married a week later, which is absolutely asinine. But the point that I wanted to make was there are women who follow these relationship gurus, or whatever you want to call them, on social media. And they'll hear men and women say stuff like, a man who loves you and who wants to be with you, who knows you're the one, they're not going to string you along. They're going to know right away. And I think women may fall into that trap if a man saying, I want to marry you within a week, or I want to marry you within knowing you for 2 months, or whatever. And I just want to say that is always going to be the worst thing that you can do. Like that is, no man in his right mind will marry a woman after a week unless he has ulterior motives. And so I want women to know that there is a such thing as a man knowing very, very soon into dating a woman, if she's the one. It doesn't mean that you should do it. If he knows within 3 months, that doesn't mean you should marry him within 3 months. Like,
right.
It just means he knows.
And a normal man wouldn't ask that.
A normal man absolutely would not ask that. And I swear, every story I hear about where the man proposed to the woman that soon in a week, a month, things like that, it didn't end well for the woman usually. I'm not saying it never does, because it's
a test in and of itself. It's a test of your compliance and your boundaries.
Absolutely.
Because a normal person would ask, like, why do you want to marry me so bad, like so soon?
Absolutely.
Like, why,
And I just want women to know you can, a guy can see you and think you're the one and all that stuff, but you need to still take, this is just my own personal opinion, a couple years at least before you even think about getting engaged. And then you get engaged stay engaged for another year or whatever. And then you watch them, you watch their behavior, you see if they're consistent. At the very least, you got to do that. And I feel like she failed her daughters by jumping in too soon. She jumped in too soon. She put her kids in harm's way. And I know people who won't bring a new man around their kids for years. Like years.
Yeah.
You're not meeting my kids. So a week. But she didn't have the girls at the time. I think she had 2 boys. And then when they got married, she had the 2 daughters. Age 2 and 4. She said she went to change the 2-year-old's diaper and saw something unusual, and she asked, it might have been the 4-year-old, I can't remember which one. She asked one of them, "Did have somebody been touching you?" And the girl said it was daddy, and that's how she said she found out.
It was so sickening, like hearing that on the video.
It was.
Like, I at no point did I know where that story was going,
and so I have that gripe with her as far as meeting a man and marrying him after a week. The biggest issue that I have too, though, is that she put her kids' business out there in the street, and that's going to be on the internet forever. And the kids did not consent to people knowing you were molested by your dad when you were 2 years old. When they become teenagers and stuff, and this is on the internet, and people know who their mom is, it's gonna be out there. And I think it was so wrong. I wish she would have found a different way. And don't get me wrong, we all handle things differently. We all cope differently. And maybe this was the only way she could cope. But I just feel like she failed her kids again by also putting their business out there. Because not everybody wants to come out and say, I was tampered with when I was a child. That's not anybody's business. The people who are brave and who want to come out and talk about it, they can do that on their own accord. But when you just come out and tell somebody's business as they, when they were children, they don't have any right over that. And I just think that's the thing that bugged me the most almost. It's like, I get it that it happened to them and all that stuff, but it's like then you added insult to injury by letting everybody know. And a part of me wonders, I might get some flack for this. A part of me wonders if the story is completely true. That's another thing that I thought about. And I'm not saying she's lying. I don't know this woman. She seemed very emotional, about it. But the only reason why my brain got to, I guess, tingling a little bit is because the type of content she does is like, I'm a hypergamous woman, and if you want to get what I got, this is what you need to do, and this is what you need to do to attract men, and this is how you need to talk and dress, and this is where you meet the men and all that stuff. And you did all this talk about like, if you know, sometimes it's just love at first sight and you just know. And she was so sure of herself, only to come back and basically say, I was bamboozled. Yes. Now, I'm not saying that what I'm saying is true. I don't know this woman. I hope she's telling the truth, because that would be real fucked up if she is doing that. But that's just something that I thought about. But I'm not claiming.
Well, right, because she was lying that he was like treating her well and all this stuff. Like
that's what I'm saying.
Telling the truth.
That's what I'm
kind
saying.
Of like.
So it makes me wonder. Because how you just throw your kids under the bus like that. I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt. She probably needed somebody to talk to. She probably didn't know how to cope with it. So I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt. And what she's saying is possibly very true. But I just looked at the other side of it. Like, when people have an image to uphold, they will do pretty much anything under the sun to keep that image. And they will tell whatever lies they need to make it seem like they're not the victim or that they are the victim, that they did nothing wrong. I didn't ignore any red flags. He just turned on me.
Right.
And that's just kind of how I was looking at it. But like I said, I could be absolutely wrong about that, and I hope that I am. But I still don't like that she made the choice to put her kids' business out there, and they're not old enough to agree or disagree with that. Just
like, no matter how you look at it, it's just such a terrible situation.
It is very terrible.
And people were saying stuff too, like, I mean, Shira doesn't usually come out and like respond to things like this, but in this one case, she actually made a response video. And, this is the problem that she initially had with people spreading around just clips of her talking rather than tuning into her lives and getting all the information and context, because she really does. If you go and listen to her, she really does encourage a lot of precaution and a lot of like, you're not actually supposed to be bringing anything to the table. Like, a lot of people assume that she's like a trad wife. She's not a trad wife. She doesn't cook, clean, do all this stuff, so a lot of people have these like misconceptions, and that's the danger of taking that kind of advice, with and just like doing your version of it. Like, there's a reason why she has all of these tips and safeguards and vetting techniques. And, she very much encourages like having money on the side and putting money away.
Absolutely.
And, I just feel like she got dragged because of that. And it's kind of unfair because she, there's certain critiques that I agree with when it comes to Shira, but she was such an eye opener for just the way that she frames things. Like, I think she's helpful to listen to. Just know that her advice is not for the weak. And like, you have to listen to absolutely everything if you're going to go through with it. And she definitely would never encourage getting married after a week.
Absolutely. And she said that. She said, I'd never encourage women to be desperate. Because when you are desperate,
exactly.
you make decisions from a place of lack, and you get yourself in a whole lot of trouble. And that I can vouch for, because I used to watch her stuff a lot some years ago. Shira's haven't been around for a minute.
Yeah.
And I used to watch her stuff here and there, and she was very entertaining. She's very funny. I don't know if people watch any of her earlier clips
so
where she would
funny.
just be a jokester and like, but she's like, that's desperation. And she would never encourage women to be desperate, period.
Her advice was mostly about, it's a financial guru.
Yeah.
It's a financial advice thing. And it has like a little bit of comedy in there. And that's all I really took it for. It was not meant to be a guideline into finding the man of your dreams who's a rich prince and he's going to sweep you off your feet and take away all your financial problems.
It was always transactional, and she's very clear about that.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much for the tea, ladies. Let's dive right into our B segment after the break. Once again, we're talking about women in schools and workplaces and why that's threatening to young men and why it's making them turn conservative. All right, dear listeners, and in this third part of women's issues around the world, we're going to be speaking about women in schools and in workplaces and why young men are turning more conservative. How do you feel like women being in schools and workplaces alongside with men, and how they've been able to succeed and catch up despite years of oppression? How do you feel like that's become actually a threat to women, if anything?
So the way that I can break it down from my perspective is that little boys from a very young age have been lied to. They were brought up into this patriarchy to believe that they were superior to women. They were the leads. They're the heads. The women are not as smart. We're emotional. We don't have any logic. They were told all of these things. And the truth is that women, being female in general, we are the natural protectors and providers and leaders. And you can see that in nature because the female or the mother goes out and search for food for her babies. Yep. Whether the male is there or not, the mother is going to protect her offspring from threats, from weather that's not favorable, any little thing. So it's the same thing with us as humans. We are the ones that protect the babies, and our brains are larger. Yes. And it's definitely in certain areas than the males. So the truth is the men knew this. When we were growing up, we always heard girls develop faster than boys, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's mentally, probably emotionally, probably, spiritually, if you're into that. Like in every way, we're the givers of life. So it would only make sense that if we are able to give life and nurture the life that we have given, that we would have all the faculties, the mental faculties that we need to survive and make it on our own. We know how to do so much stuff, whether there's a man there or not. And because little boys grew up into teenagers and then into grown men believing, no, it's us. We're the head. We're the leaders. You're beneath us. You're just a servant. You're just a maid. Their world is crashing down now because they're seeing that the women have been educating ourselves. We've been working. We can take care. We can hold down the fort. We're able to multitask. We can do all these things. And it's a threat to a lot of them because now they're like, okay, well, I thought my place was to provide and protect, but the woman is doing all of this. So now what do I do? And instead of working on themselves and looking within, They would rather degrade our degrees. We don't care about your degrees. You're masculine. You don't know how to submit. They would rather blame us for something that we naturally have. Like if we're naturally I don't want to say we're the smarter species, but I'm trying to find a way to say that we are ahead.
We're socialized also towards like radical responsibility, in my opinion. Like as young girls, it's kind of like everything is your fault, you know, and you better do something about it. So that contributes too. I mean, I do feel like, you know, the gray matter is absolutely true. And I feel like a mother's brain also changes as well to protect the offspring and things like that. But there's also socialization to it even.
I agree. The socialization part is the fact that as little girls come out the womb, we're already expected to, like the first thing they give us is a baby doll, right?
Yeah.
So they're already priming our minds that we have to be a mother one day. And there are some parents, not all parents do this, but there are a lot of parents who put all the responsibilities in the household and the babysitting and all that on the girls. And the boys get to go off and go play with their friends and do whatever, play the video game. The girl has to cook. She has to clean. She has to make the plates. She has to do the laundry. There's a curfew for her because you're a woman and you can't, you're a young lady and you can't carry yourself and you can't be outside at a certain time. But the boys usually don't have a curfew. They can be out playing basketball or football with the guys or doing whatever. And so it starts at a young age for us. Like the responsibility, the load is like astronomical, you know, for the girls. And one of the ways that we can prove or that we know that women have always been ahead of the game, and the way you can prove that men knew this, they literally shut us out of certain industries, from educating ourselves and all of that, because they knew that we would outpace the guys. And it was a way for them to like put a Band-Aid or something on the guys' ego or self-esteem to say, no, you guys are the leaders. It was a lie. And I feel like it's detrimental because the patriarchy doesn't just harm us, it harms them as well because they are living under a complete lie. And the thing that bugs me the most is that they don't want to accept it. That ego gets in the way and they don't want to accept. And I don't even want it to be a situation where it's like girls are better than boys or boys are better than girls. We can work together. Women have weaknesses and the men can make up for those weaknesses. Men have weaknesses and women can make up for those. And it's supposed to be a unit. We're supposed to pick up the slack where the other person lacks and we do our part as well. But I think the average woman looks at it that way. It's like we're a partnership. If I say, "Oh, I got a raise at work, and now I'm making," I hate saying, I'm so sick of six figures on. I hate saying six figures on the internet. But if I say, "Oh, now I'm making $300K a year, and my man is making 80," and at first I was making 40, and now I just got this big promotion, and now I'm making $300K. We would come home and say, "Hey, guess what? I got this raise. We can finally get that house, babe. That the house that we always wanted with the acres and blah, blah, blah. And we're good." And a lot of guys are like, "Oh, I got to find a way to knock her down. Let me get her pregnant so she can have to stay home." Or now you're masculine. "Oh, what, you don't need me now?" Their minds just go to combat mode. And women are like, "I thought this was a partnership. If I eat, you eat. If I make it, you make it."
But it was actually a transaction, right? Like that's how they're taught to operate. Like it's like you stay home and I'll go to work. And then when women went to work and were like, "Okay, well, what are you going to do if I also go to work?" The men were like, "Make you stay home." Like
exactly.
So write some laws to make you stay home, get you pregnant, whatever.
And keep you pregnant as much as possible, you know? Yeah. Because the more kids you have, the more tied down you're going to be. And I remember my mom, there's 6 of us. My mom used to say when I was younger that the more kids a woman has, the more her stock goes down. And when she first told me that, I was young and I kind of understood the gist of what she was saying, but I didn't really get it until I was older. And she was speaking about herself, but she was also speaking about women in general. And what she was basically saying was like, you know, the more kids you have, the more you are tied down, the less options you're going to have in decent men wanting you, because most men want ready-made family. I mean, don't want ready-made families. They want to create their own family, so they don't want to take care of somebody else's kids. They don't want the financial responsibility. You don't know what kind of man you're dealing with as far as bringing your kids around. All these women are bringing their kids around men that they don't know, like the ISIS chick, which I might talk about that later because Jesus. But yeah, so when she said that, now that I'm older, I think back and I'm like, this is what men do. This is why they want to keep women pregnant, because they know you're going to be stuck in the house. You can't go anywhere. They don't want you to work because if he starts being abusive or mean or not coming home or whatever it is that's going to make the woman unhappy, she can't just pick up and leave because she's stuck. And who's going to want her with all these kids? And they also know that other men look at women with a bunch of kids as like damaged goods or whatever. Unfortunately. Now, I'm not saying that I believe that. A liability. Yeah. I absolutely don't believe that. I don't know, you don't either. But that's how they see it. And it's very important when I tell women, like, don't sit up there and have all these kids because he wants them. Don't have more kids than you can have in case he died or something like that happened. You're going to be on your own taking care of those kids. And so, but men know that. And that is the number one way to keep a woman down when she gets a promotion or when she's trying to go to school for nursing or to be a lawyer or whatever. And he can see the upward trajectory of her life. He has to find a way to cut that right down. And getting a woman pregnant is typically the number one. There's other ways that they keep you down, but that's the number one way. Because they know now you got to be a mom. Your body's going to change. You're not going to be as confident, probably. Not saying every woman is not confident, but I'm saying like you're not going to feel sexy. So you're not going to want to go out and show other men. You know, they just know it's all a mind game that they use to play on women. And I really just hate that the men feel like their fragility is just like their ego. I really hate that they don't know how to see women as humans and as partners instead of something to conquer or something to compete with. It's mind-boggling to me.
Oh my God, you said all of that so well. I have absolutely no notes. Like, wow. You just broke that down. By the way, Sovereign does not script anything she says. We'll just be like, you know, here's the topic. We'll segue the topic, and she just goes off. I'm amazed by that. I still will get off track.
Really? Oh, I know. I get off track all the time, girl.
Yeah, no, that was great, though. Okay, well, that leads me directly into the fact that young men are turning conservative and using this election, especially as a chance to vote against women's rights. Yep. This has very much been a theme, and we've talked about the whole "your body, my choice" thing. We've talked about, you know, men celebrating, and it kind of broke my heart because meanwhile, a lot of women really did think that Kamala was going to take it. Like, there was really a lot of hope among a lot of young women that I was seeing on TikTok. A lot of my mutuals were like, I feel like we can do it. I feel like, you know, and then just seeing young men celebrate and kind of bro out over all this has been really, really discouraging. And so I want to talk about why that might be. And it very much goes along with everything you said, Sovereign, that research actually finds that males are expected to actively earn and maintain their status as real men, which, again, just goes with everything you were saying. Like, whatever makes a man is him not being a woman. It almost makes me think that, like, the concept of a woman instead of just fellow human being was invented like for men to distinguish themselves somehow, because as you said, they can sense that women are more the ones with like access to real power, the kind of power that comes from within, and the kind of power that men like to have and really lean on. It usually, I've noticed, it comes from like structures and where they sort of like shake out in those structures. And usually the structures are hierarchical and involve like status, money, using women as objects, etc. And so that's what makes a man. And when you think about it like that, it makes perfect sense why a lot of young men would, vote for Trump or celebrate when Trump gets elected, because it gives them this feeling that, oh, we're going to go back to the good old days when women couldn't, pretend to be men, when women, weren't like in our space and in our face and just, proving all this stuff, and these modern women, and they don't want to settle down. They don't want to have kids. They don't want to do this. And it's like, but why do you want women to do that? Y'all are fine not settling down. Y'all are fine with men not having kids. Y'all are fine with men being bachelors well into their 40s, their 50s, and still not having kids at the end of the day. But the reason that it's important for a lot of women to keep doing that is because that's what gives men their masculinity. And that's what they were voting this year to take back, because it represents this enormous amount of power.
Undeserved, unearned power at that.
And that's why they need to scream about it from the rooftops, about how they're leaders and stuff like that. Women have been saying this for a long time. If you were really such a good leader, you wouldn't have to
say it.
Exactly. You wouldn't have to be trying to rub it in everybody's face all the time, because you would just be out there doing whatever a leader does.
Exactly. And to piggyback off that a little bit, I would say I really wish that the men just kind of take a break and think about, okay, the online tactics aren't working. The belittling isn't working. The degrading your degree and your accomplishments isn't working. Maybe I need to sit back and really work on myself. Stop chasing women. Stop, doing whatever it is that they do to acquire women's attention, and really sit down with themselves and just self-reflect. To us, that's so easy to do. And it's almost like for them, it's almost like they resent it and they reject it so much that it's almost like they feel like if they did do any self-reflection, that they would just immediately burst into flames and like die in 5 seconds. If I do this inner work, I'm not going to survive. It's going to be the end of my life. That's how much they reject the idea. Like, to us, and this is another example of why I say we are more logical in many ways. Because in our minds, we naturally think, okay, just go sit in a room with a pen and pad and just like write down your goals and write down what you want to do. That's all you got to do, and start working on it. To me, it's as simple as like blinking your eyes. But to them, that ego gets in the way so much. It's like, oh no, no, I'm not doing that. I'm the leader. Fuck you. Fuck what you talking about. Go take your ass in the kitchen and be barefoot and pregnant where you belong. It's like no matter what you say, they're just not going to, they don't get it. And the only thing that worries me is how, like, the fact that I feel like they're going to become more and more unhinged the more women turn away from them. And I'm seeing more and more women choosing celibacy, choosing to be lesbians, choosing to, or date women or whatever. I don't know if that's, I feel like that's a whole other topic. But women are doing everything under the sun except dealing with a lot of men now. So it's like whatever, I'll go outside and I'll count the stars at night, or I would rather, sweep the beach than to deal with a man. And more women are doing that. And so I'm just curious to know what's going to happen in their minds. Could it force certain guys to work on themselves? I think a very small, tiny percent, yes. The rest of them are just going to go rogue because they don't really seem to know another way to cope with the fact that they are not the leaders. And you can be a leader as a man. Like it's not, when I say men are not natural leaders and women are, the same way women learn all the things that we learn, men can learn it too. Like you're human. Yeah. Like you are half part woman. You're half woman. Like you can learn it.
Yes.
They just don't want to. And that's the part that's frustrating.
And that's why I couldn't agree more. And that's why we call masculinity fragile. That's why we have this whole idea, because when masculinity is threatened, it can't respond with softness, right? It has to respond by like doubling down, and that's why we encourage men to also have femininity, so that not have,
know
lean
what you mean.
into their
Yeah.
femininity, not just let it wither and die, at the age of like 12. But, the things that don't shatter, like women, they don't shatter because they're flexible and soft. But if you hit like a marble statue in the right place, it'll shatter into a million pieces,
Oh my God,
right?
that's
Because it's
perfect.
hard, And so this is why men tend towards like rigidity and traditional values over progressive ideologies, in my opinion. Like being progressive would require admitting that you don't have all the answers, but you're willing to try something new and like figure it out, which usually like can't guarantee success. But the only things we can know is like what we already know. If we're resistant to change, we'll never know anything else. But this is why like masculinity as it relates to men has been so difficult to redefine, like exactly what you're talking about, why it's so frustrating. Because masculinity in and of itself is a rigid concept, and it can only be properly balanced by femininity. But that's what men are afraid of because they don't want to be women. Because we've associated femininity so much with women and denigrated women so much that men just have no incentive. They benefit so much from being perceived as masculine that there's no incentive for them to integrate femininity. And they view it as it'll denigrate me as a man to involve femininity. If
Yes.
I'm singing along to a girly song or whatever, I can be having fun until like a bigger man comes along or, some other man comes along and is like, oh, you're out here dancing and singing with the girls, da da da. And he can just immediately put you back in your place. And men are afraid of that. And that's why they hide that side of themselves and, do things like that. And they benefit from that because the patriarchy rewards them. And there's just no incentive for them. And unfortunately, like men would rather die alone or vote against the rights of their fellow human beings in order to not be considered feminine. And there's no such thing as like a real man. That whole idea was invented in order to be able to bring women down, which is why there's so many double standards associated with masculinity and real men. Like it kind of like, it's like a snake eating its own tail. It always like turns in on itself. But yeah, men never think about this critically because if they were to do that, it would involve admitting that the privilege and power that they have that comes with masculinity and the patriarchy, like you said, it hurts them. Like they've been played by it just as much, but they don't want to admit that because that's what gives them power over women. And the government, by the way, is like on their side now. So yes, I think
Absolutely.
like you said, it's going to get worse. And when it comes to like politics, specifically, there was this article I was reading from The Guardian about Gen Z voters and their political ideology. And they were saying that even men who agree that the US is like too soft and feminine don't feel motivated to act, which is interesting. Like, I feel like a lot of men didn't vote in this election and like still celebrated the results because they feel like getting involved in politics is also feminine. They feel like doing anything about anything is like kind of feminine. And it's also because young men have fallen behind in like education as well. Because now that women have entered that space and have started excelling in it, men are now viewing, it's kind of like, how men were always teachers and stuff and nurses until that became like a woman-dominated field. And now it's kind of like an insult for a man to be a nurse or a teacher or whatever. Like it's like below his worth. It's kind of the same thing's kind of happening with education, which is why these men were able to be like mobilized into celebrating, like even when they didn't vote for this or whatever, like they were still celebrating a Trump win because they don't perceive him as like a highly educated, like he's not a liberal, like liberalism has been now associated with white collar education, etc. Whereas conservatism or republicanism is associated with like blue collar and like
not
getting it
educated.
out the mud, kind of thing. And so I think they also didn't vote because they didn't feel like their rights were under direct threat. But yeah, still because a lot of them didn't vote, we got Trump. I feel like even a lot of young Gen Z Democrat men they actually tend to feel the most lost and like the least like they have a place in today's current society.
I agree. And I think that's true because the Gen Z women, and I'm not saying all of them, but a big chunk of them are seeing they're not growing up with the same lies that millennials and Gen Xers grew up with. They're kind of they're coming up in social media. That's all they know is social media. Like the millennials, there was a time when social media didn't exist and cell phones didn't exist. And so we got the best of both worlds. Whereas so they're growing up in just social media. That is all they know. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that having that type of access to everybody around the world is letting the women know, oh, men really are not leaders. They're paying attention to everything that's unraveling for us. It's unraveling for them in real time. So they're coming into it already knowing that, oh, who cares about marriage? Marriage, you could get married or not get married. It doesn't matter. You can have kids or not have kids. They're coming into it seeing both sides of everything instead of just, this is the one way. And the young men are affected because the girls they're coming into it not looking at them as anything other than they're just men. They're not leaders. They're not protectors. You can get married. You don't have to get married. You can have kids. You don't have to have kids. You can go to college. You don't have to go to college. I'm not thinking about college. I want to be a content creator. Like they're coming into it with all of these different options. When I was coming up, it was go to college, get a degree. Men are the leaders. Women can't preach in church, and it was all one way, and that was it. Because when I was coming up, I didn't know too many like child-free women, and even any women that didn't have kids, it was seen as she's barren. She can't have kids. Not that they chose not to have them. Now that I'm older, I know a lot of them did choose it, but the Gen Zs are coming into a plethora of options, a plethora of pathways to go. As far as lifestyle and what you want to do with your future. And that's going to directly affect the men. I hope I said that right. That's going to directly affect them the most because to some degree that can be an advantage to both sides because the women aren't coming into it expecting men to be necessarily be a certain way. And the young men may or may not have that same pressure. I don't know. They probably do have the pressure, but it's probably not as bad only because there's a lot of them that are willing to just, I'm just going to live with my mom. I don't really care. I don't have to do this. If they already know or think that there is no light at the end of the tunnel or reason to go out and acquire things to get women because they already kind of know there's like, I may get a woman, I may not. It doesn't really matter. They're probably not living under that same pressure, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Like at this point, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, like almost at this point, we need to be telling like little boys that like, oh, and so when your wife goes to work, like when you get married and your wife goes to work, like, and she comes home late, like, are you going to make her dinner? Like, is the laundry going to be done? Like, who's going to want to marry you if you don't know how to do these things? Because your wife's going to be going to work. So are you going to pick up the kids from daycare? Are you going to be a stay-at-home dad? Like asking those kinds of questions of boys because that's where women are like getting the raw deal. They're like, oh, so I go to work and I raise the kids. Whereas men are like, well, I just go to work. I don't want to do anything else, but also go 50-50 with me. And so it's like, it's crazy. And this kind of goes right into the other thing I wanted to say that like, kind of like you were saying, worldwide, there's like feelings of hopelessness and like social disillusionment, especially on the men's side. And social media algorithms are like magnifying this by drawing moderately conservative young men towards more extreme and like radical conservative male role models and worldviews. But globally, like young women are the most liberal group in human history. Young women were worried above all, about social issues such as sexual harassment, domestic violence, child abuse, and neglect, whereas young men were more geared towards achieving social and economic status and set store by conservative family values and competition, bravery, and honor. And I just feel like men do not care about things that benefit or keep others safe. Like they're not socialized to do that.
No.
And that's because they're raised with male main character syndrome. And so even if you do a good job at home mitigating that kind of societal messaging, young boys will still largely see like heroes, villains, famous sports players, politicians, respected figures be largely represented by men. And that gives them this idea that they're more entitled to such positions and treatment than women are on a basic level. And so this is why, like, because we've been telling men that for so long and we're not putting that pressure on them to also contribute at home or to like think about what they're going to do when their wife goes to work or how they're going to be a stay-at-home dad or what kind of skills are going to make them attractive to women. This is why they can't help but perceive everything that's happening around them from like a how will this affect me lens. Like it's this narcissistic main character syndrome. And I don't know if you remember this, but when Kamala Harris was doing like voter outreach and she asked a bunch of young men like what would make them more likely to vote for her, a bunch of them said like getting rid of child support.
Oh my God.
Or like getting rid of like mandatory visitation or whatever, like things that would absolve them
Only
of social responsibility
benefit them.
instead of like, taking it on or like asking for community support or more
That's
money
so
for
true.
single mothers. Like they just center themselves and they're like, no, but how's that going to help me? Like they don't care because women being disadvantaged actually helps them because it gives them this idea that they can hand out like saviorism to women or tell women like what they did wrong to end up in that situation and like just gives them like all that kind of power. And so like all the things that men care about politically involve things that would add to their individual status at other people's expense. You know what I mean?
Right. That is so true. And as a Black woman, that was so embarrassing. Like, now I don't know how if there were other races of men that were trying to get out of their child support. I'm not sure, but I do know that was one of the things that a lot of Black men were talking about. Child support forgiveness, and I'm just like, that is so embarrassing. Like, you really want to pick a president based on if they're going to facilitate in letting you get off or get out of taking care of the kids that you decided to have. Like, it's frustrating. I just did a video the other day that got them all mad, and people, all yesterday was telling me how many people were doing lives about me. And they were saying, oh, she's self-hating and she's this and she's that. And what I was really saying was like, there was a lot of guys who thought that if they voted for Kamala, it would put Black men and Black women back like on one accord. And I was there to say, no, it's not. If we were done with you before the election, we're going to still be done with you. I don't care how you voted. And I pretty much said that. And, they got really upset. And I'm like, it is what it is. We have our own issues in the Black community, but one of the biggest issues that we have and why getting educated and working, especially in the Black community, affects us or the Black men so much. They feel as though we're supposed to struggle forever. We grew up in the struggle. We came up, slavery did this and it messed up everybody's mind. And the mindset has been passed down generation to generation. We're supposed to be their ride or dies forever, no matter what they do, no matter how disloyal they are, no matter how much they lie and cheat. We're not supposed to date outside of our race. We're not supposed to give up on them. We're not supposed, and I am one of the Black women, and it's plenty of us, but I'm one of them that are like, I'm not loyal to nobody that's not loyal to me. I don't give a fuck who you are.
You have to know your worth. Yeah,
absolutely.
You can't.
And they're like,
that's at other people's expense. That's men wanting.
It's always, it's always that way.
What's up, you guys? The mail's here. So we have somebody. Hi, I'm a 25-year-old woman balancing work and school in a very conservative area of the U.S. My family and my best friend voted for Trump in the last election, which has created a lot of tension. My friend, who once strongly supported women's rights and had liberal views, now laughs at people concerned about losing these rights. My parents, though they've always loved and supported me, voted for Trump, saying he's a lesser of two evils. Oh, gosh.
Oh, my God.
I feel for you, sis. When I try to explain my worries about the impact on women's LGBTQ and Black rights, they don't seem to understand. I love my family so much, and I've always thought so highly of them. This is just very sad and disappointing to me. I'm in a difficult financial position and rely on my family for support, so cutting them off doesn't feel like an option, even though I know many people choose to distance themselves in similar situations. It's painful and disappointing to feel isolated because of my beliefs, and I'm not sure how to navigate these relationships when our values are so misaligned. I also struggle to articulate why these issues matter so much to me since I'm not very politically versed. What would you advise for moving forward when I feel like no one around me shares my values? Sydney.
Oh, Sydney, I'm so sorry. That sounds terrible. Keep taking their money, though. I mean, listen.
How old was Sydney? Did she say her age?
She's 25 years old. 25-year-old woman balancing work and school. So she's in school.
So,
Is your school conservative, Sydney? Because I went to a fairly conservative school myself, too, for a while. I definitely understand the isolation that is felt. But there are usually like little fringe groups that you can find that kind of sit on a table at like lunch, and they look like a bunch of weirdos, and you can just walk up to them and say hello. That's how I
That's your
found my
people.
friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, them's your people. That's how I found my friends when I went to school in a very conservative part of Louisiana. And for privacy's sake, I won't say which school. But yeah, so it was a conservative college campus, and if you had like liberal views or liberal opinions, you were very much part of the minority. So I always kind of like kept to myself. But then there would always be this group of weirdos at my school sitting outside the quad, and they're just eating lunch and saying things almost outlandish. And I just kind of, I don't know, I just stopped and then I asked them some questions and just kind of got to know them. And that's when like they kind of just let out their views. And I was like, oh, okay, we kind of have a similar opinion on that. And so like I just kind of found my people that way. And my college life got slightly easier. If that's available to you to like try to find some like-minded friends, I would always recommend that. Definitely the library would probably be an option. My school actually didn't have a library. It got wiped out by Katrina. So yeah, that's why everybody was like sitting in like a outside quad area and like the cafeteria, because a lot of the school didn't get rebuilt after these hurricanes. Like infrastructure in Louisiana is poor, to say the least.
So she's not a conservative, but she goes to a conservative school, and she relies on her family.
Well, we don't know. Yeah,
We don't know. She's just from a very conservative area. And at this point, she is in school and she's relying on her conservative family for support. And she's not sure how to sort of navigate that.
So this is just me. I would play it off, keep my beliefs to myself. If you need their money and support to get through, just keep doing what you've been doing and make sure you are making enough money to save up so that you can get the hell out of there as soon as possible. But you just kind of have to, what they say, fake it to make it.
Yeah,
Just
lay low.
Yeah, just lay low. Try to find a community of people in your school. If not, you have a bunch of, people online that you can kind of find solace. It's not the same as having in-person friends, but it is better than having nobody. You could easily go on panels on social media if you would like, without showing your face, things like that. You can find community online if you can't find it in person. Because I know how hard it is to feel like you don't have anybody that understands, but you'll be surprised at the people around you who secretly don't believe a lot of those things and they're just kind of going along. You would have to put yourself out there a little bit as far as like being open to talking to people.
It sounds like she is. It sounds like she's tried to have these conversations with the family, but they're just being very...
Oh, no. But I mean people, like-minded people to her. Like, if her family is
like out and about.
Yeah. If she's feeling kind of, outcasted, it's people out there, whatever views you have, there are people out there with those views. You just have to possibly put in just a teensy bit more work to find them. But if not, you can definitely find community online for sure. But in the meantime, lay low, keep your head down, take the support, be saving up as much money as you can, because at some point you're going to eventually want to be out on your own anyway. You're 25. I'm sure you're not going to want to be there or still depending on them when you're like 28 or 29 or 30, right? So you just have to be working on an exit plan, but you really will have to keep your head down and just kind of play play along to get along, as they say.
Yeah, that's a good one. And also, don't keep trying to explain basic empathy and human rights to people that are morally bankrupt and are hell-bent on misunderstanding you on purpose, because that's just always going to be a losing battle. So I would do what Sovereign said, definitely, and just kind of keep your head down on that. And don't let the bastards grind you down. And there will be some people around you that will share your views, but they probably are a lot like you in that they are also feeling isolated and that nobody agrees with them. And so they're going to want to keep their head down too. So it takes a little bit of effort, like she said, to get them out of their shell and finding people with these views.
Absolutely. Good luck to you.
Yeah,
Good luck, Sydney.
Thank you for your question. And Gwen, did you have a recommendation for us to finish out this episode?
Yeah, join a martial art, first of all.
Yes.
Get a gun. Learn your Second Amendment rights, both federally and by state.
Learn how to use a gun. Also, know how to shoot well. Practice.
Go to a shooting range. In fact, and when you go to a shooting range and you're a girl, they're immediately gonna want to pay special attention to you because that's like a target demographic that they've always struggled trying to reach and to get into these shooting ranges. Yeah, like they want your money, definitely, and they want you to be able to feel comfortable there. So definitely there would be some in there that would be like, yeah, let me just, show you how to use a gun, and just let them teach you how to use a gun. Let them teach you how to point and shoot and get the target on the little clippy thingies to shoot at. Because when you go to the shooting range, you got to take a piece of paper of a target and you clip them onto these things that hang on strings. It's usually like binder clips that hang on 2 strings. And then you press a button and the button sends that piece of paper back on like a zip line to the shooting range. And then you got a gun and then you just, shoot it at the target. And the bullets bounce on this like rubber thing on the back so it doesn't hit anything important. And yeah, it's actually super fun at shooting range. I highly recommend women to go to shooting ranges and be familiar with shooting ranges and guns in general. And definitely the men there want to be able to... Sovereign, are you okay?
Sorry. I was looking for my target practice paper.
Oh,
because I still got one.
Hey, nice.
Oh, I had it for a few years. Making too much noise. I was trying not to make no noise though.
No, it's okay. And like these men, they want you there, and they're gonna want to teach you, and they'll be excited. So definitely just lean on that. Use that to your advantage. Leverage it.
I never thought I would do such a thing, but I'm actually excited. I'm excited to be able to go just because in light of everything, I'm so actually happy, like in hindsight, about the Second Amendment. I definitely think things should be regulated a lot more.
That should have been for women, honestly.
Yeah.
Women have more of a reason than men to
I was gonna say,
have a gun.
Yeah, we really should be the only ones to.
And so yeah, that's definitely a recommendation. And maybe I'll post a TikTok eventually on how to vet a martial arts gym to your preference. So if you prefer, not to be the only woman at your gym, there are ways that you can be able to tell, just based on their website or based on their Google reviews. But yeah, I'll definitely post like a how-to because that's how I found my gym. And I'm super comfortable there. I'm learning all kinds of self-defense tactics that I think are very useful and important. And I think all women should have this in their toolbox. And eventually, whenever I go into my martial arts career a little bit more, I'd love to be able to host seminars to teach women self-defense and how to grapple and feel more comfortable at shooting ranges. And maybe even host a little club there and go to a shooting range with all my girlies and teach y'all how to use a gun.
Hell yeah.
So gun would be first option. Second option, martial arts. Third option, pepper spray or like bear mace. Yeah. Bear mace. Because sometimes those tiddlywinks off of Amazon, just little like spray, and they don't, point and shoot like a gel. If you can get the ones that have like a gel texture, get those. And they'll specify on Amazon.
Costco also sells bear spray in the springtime, I think.
Nice. My Costco doesn't because I'm in Texas, and Southeast Texas doesn't really have a lot of bears. Depends on where you go.
Oh, that makes sense. I'm in the Pacific Northwest.
Some of these shooting ranges have like pictures of like politicians on there, and you can just use those.
Oh,
Oh, good.
It's hilarious.
That's a good
Sounds
idea,
great.
actually.
Right? Women should be the ones, running shooting ranges, in my opinion. Like,
I'm sitting here talking about I'm recommending people laugh at Trump regretters. And you're like,
Well, that's the beauty.
And you are like, no, we need to get some guns and some martial arts.
Yeah.
The
Arm
real meat and
yourselves.
potatoes of like what we need to be doing.
but it's okay. And also, I wanted to do like a recommendation for one of my Twitter followers has a library that she put together of radical feminist literature, and it's just a whole.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's huge, and like it was crowdsourced, so a lot of other people contributed to it, and they even offer translations in different languages now. And some of these books are like really old, and she preserved them, and they're free.
That's
it's free to
incredible.
read.
I was just going to say we'll have that in the show notes for sure. So look for it and dig around.
So her name is Lady Labrie on Twitter. Shout out to her. She has a massive collection of radical feminist literature if y'all ever want to learn more. So if you're a fan of the 4Bs, you might actually like some of these books that she has in her free Google library. So we will link that in that description.
Well, thank you so much, Gwen. Thank you so much, Sovereign. This concludes our third episode. And once again, we are so very thankful to have our listeners here, to have our supporters here. If you support us on Patreon, thank you so much. We love you. We appreciate you. If you haven't had a chance to check that out yet, please do. We have a support tier. We also have a tier with some fun perks, and we have a VIP tier where y'all get a little bit more input on the show and get to vote on segments that we do in the future. And please share this show with your friends. Please share these episodes. When we come back, we're going to have Shar Henley on, who's the organizer of the Femme Freeze movement. And if you haven't heard about that yet, please do check it out. It's femmefreeze.org, FEMMEFREEZE.org. And we'll fill you in on all of that in our next episode coming out at the beginning of December. All right, hope y'all have a great rest of your day or night, whatever time it is. I hope the rest of your time is great. Oh my God, that was so bad.
Happy holidays, y'all.